Caught in the act, how I served my cheating wife divorce papers at her secret getaway. Hey Reddit, I'm Mike, 36, and until recently, I thought I had a rock-solid marriage. My wife, Julie, 34, and I had been together for 11 years, married for 9. We've gone through the typical ups and downs like any couple, but I always thought we were committed for life. We had built a life together. We owned a house, had steady jobs, and even talked about starting a family soon. Then, everything changed when I found out she'd been cheating on me with a guy from her office. Instead of losing it on the spot, I stayed calm, collected evidence, and waited for the perfect opportunity to make my move. When I found out she had planned a romantic weekend getaway with this guy, I knew what I had to do. I showed up at the hotel and handed her divorce papers, catching her off guard in the most spectacular way possible. Here's the story of how it all went down. Julie and I met when we were in our mid-20s. I was working as a construction manager, and she was climbing the ranks in advertising. I remember the first time I saw her at a friend's party. She was the kind of person who drew people in with her infectious laugh and magnetic energy. We started talking, and it felt easy. Like I had known her for years. From that moment on, we were inseparable. Our relationship was full of passion in the beginning. We did everything together: weekend getaways, dinner dates, and spontaneous adventures. Julie was ambitious, funny, and smart. She was the kind of woman I thought I could build a life with, and for years, I thought we were doing just that. 2 years into our relationship, I proposed. I'll never forget the look on her face when I got down on one knee during a romantic weekend in Lake Tahoe. It was winter, and the snow was falling lightly around us. Julie said yes without hesitation, and we spent the evening celebrating, wrapped in the warmth of our love. Our wedding, a year later, was everything we had dreamed of. It was a small, intimate ceremony with just close family and friends. We said our vows under a canopy of trees at a lakeside venue, promising to love, cherish, and stay by each other's sides forever. At that moment, I couldn't have imagined a future where we weren't together. For the first few years of our marriage, everything seemed great. We were both focused on our careers, saving money, and building our life together. We bought a beautiful 3-bedroom house just outside of town. We talked about starting a family someday, but we weren't in any rush. We felt like we had all the time in the world. But about a year ago, things started to shift in our marriage. It was subtle at first. Julie began working late more often. She was always busy with a big project at the office or preparing for some client meeting. I didn't think much of it at first. I was proud of her success and wanted to support her career ambitions. But then, her late nights turned into frequent business trips, and the distance between us started to grow. She became more guarded with her phone, which she had never been before. I'd catch her sending messages late at night or smiling at something on her screen, only to quickly put it away when I asked her what was so funny. When I'd ask her how her day was, she'd respond with vague answers or tell me she was too tired to talk. The intimacy in our marriage also began to fade. We used to be affectionate with each other, kisses before work, cuddling on the couch, holding hands during walks. But now, it felt like there was a wall between us. Our conversations became surface level, and I found myself sleeping on the edge of the bed, feeling further away from her than I ever had before. I convinced myself it was just a rough patch. After all, every marriage goes through ups and downs, right? I tried to be patient and understanding. I told myself it was just stress from her job. I started planning romantic weekends, hoping we could rekindle the spark that once burned so brightly between us. But every time I suggested we spend some time together, she made excuses. She was always too busy with work or too tired from her long days. Looking back, I can see now that the signs were there all along. I just didn't want to see them. About 6 months ago, Julie told me she had an overnight business trip coming up, just a quick meeting with some clients in another city. She was unusually excited about it. The night before she left, she spent an hour picking out an outfit, and I remember thinking how strange it was that she cared so much about her appearance for a work meeting. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye and promised to be home by the next evening. I didn't think much of it at the time. But that evening, while I was scrolling through social media, I saw something that didn't add up. One of her co-workers posted a group photo from a happy hour event at a local bar. Julie was supposed to be out of town, but her entire team, including the people she claimed to be meeting with, were at this event. My stomach dropped. I knew something wasn't right. I called her phone, but she didn't pick up. I texted her, and she responded a few minutes later, saying she was busy with work and would call me in the morning. I stared at the screen, my gut twisting in knots. She was lying to me, and I had no idea why. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Julie's behavior had become more erratic, and I noticed her getting even more secretive about her phone and her whereabouts. I didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof, but I couldn't ignore my gut any longer. So, I decided to hire a private investigator. His name was Rick. He was a grizzled ex-cop with a no-nonsense attitude and a track record of catching cheating spouses. When I explained the situation to him, he listened intently, nodding along as I described the red flags. He didn't sugarcoat anything. "Mike, I've seen this before," Rick said, his voice gruff but empathetic. "I'll get to the bottom of it. Just be prepared for what I might find." I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I needed to know the truth. For the next few weeks, Rick followed Julie. He documented her movements, took photos, and reported back to me regularly. During this time, I tried to act as normal as possible, but inside, I was a wreck. Every time Julie came home late or went on another business trip, my mind raced with thoughts of what she might be doing. I could barely focus on my work, and I found myself withdrawing from friends and family. Then, one Friday afternoon, Rick called me. I was sitting in my office when the phone rang, and I knew from the tone of his voice that he had found something. "Mike, I've got the proof," Rick said, his voice steady but firm. "Your wife is having an affair." My heart sank as he told me the details. Julie had been meeting up with a man, Derek, multiple times over the past few weeks. They were co-workers, and he was one of the senior executives at her company. Rick had followed them to several hotels, where they'd meet up after work or during weekends. He sent me photos, clear, undeniable proof of the affair. Julie and Derek, hand in hand, walking into hotels. Julie, dressed up for her secret meetings with him. It felt like a punch to the gut. My whole world came crashing down around me. All the late nights, the business trips, the guarded phone, it all made sense now. Julie had been lying to me for months, living a double life while I was at home, completely oblivious. As I looked through the photos, my mind raced with memories of the woman I thought I had married. Julie used to be someone I trusted with my life. She was the woman who stayed up late with me when I was stressed about work, who celebrated every promotion and milestone in my career. She was the woman who held my hand during family gatherings, whispered jokes in my ear to make me laugh when the room was tense, and supported me through the toughest moments of my life. I thought we had built a strong foundation together. We had shared dreams, made plans for the future, and I believed in those plans. I believed in her. But now, all those memories felt tainted. Every smile, every hug, every "I love you" felt like a lie. After receiving the devastating proof of Julie's affair, my first instinct was to confront her immediately. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, to know why she had done this to me. The rage I felt was overwhelming. It took everything in me not to explode the second she walked through the door that night. I remember her coming home from work that evening, smiling at me like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek and told me about her day. It felt surreal. Here she was, standing in front of me, lying to my face, acting like she hadn't just spent the night with another man. But as much as I wanted to confront her right then and there, I knew I needed to stay calm. If I lost my temper, she'd deny it. She'd twist the situation around and try to play the victim. I had seen this happen before with friends who had caught their spouses cheating. The cheaters always found a way to turn the tables, to make themselves the ones who were wronged. I wasn't going to let Julie do that to me. Instead of confronting her, I decided to bide my time. I wasn't just going to call her out, I was going to surprise her in a way she'd never forget. I wanted her to feel the same shock and betrayal I had felt when I discovered her affair. Rick kept following Julie, and a week later, he told me that she and Derek had planned a romantic weekend getaway at a luxury hotel 2 hours away. They had booked a suite for 2 nights. It was the perfect opportunity. I could catch her in the act, and I would be ready with the divorce papers in hand. I contacted Karen, a divorce lawyer I had been referred to by a friend. Karen was a tough, no-nonsense woman who had dealt with plenty of cases like mine. When I told her about the affair and my plan to serve Julie the divorce papers at the hotel, she didn't flinch. "You're doing the right thing," Karen said. "Just make sure you're prepared for the fallout." With Karen's help, I drafted the divorce papers, making sure everything was airtight. I wasn't going to leave any room for Julie to manipulate the situation. I had the evidence, and I was going to make sure this divorce went as smoothly as possible for me. Over the next week, I played the part of the loving husband, pretending I didn't know what Julie was up to. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Every time she lied to me, every time she told me she was working late, I had to force myself to stay calm. There was one night when she came home late, and I could smell his cologne on her. She smiled at me and kissed me on the cheek, acting like everything was fine. Inside, I was seething. I wanted to shout, to throw the evidence in her face, to make her feel the same hurt she had caused me. But I stayed silent. My time would come soon enough. As I prepared for the confrontation, I couldn't help but think back to all the times Julie had lied to me. One trip, in particular, stood out. About 6 months ago, Julie had gone on a business trip to San Francisco. She had been unusually excited about it, spending hours picking out outfits and packing her bags. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I was happy she was doing well at work and getting opportunities to travel. But now, I couldn't help but wonder if that trip had been more than just business. Had she met Derek there? Was that the start of the affair? The thought made me sick. How long had I been living in the dark? With the divorce papers ready and the hotel information in hand, I spent the next few days mentally preparing for what I was about to do. I went over the plan in my head countless times. I would arrive at the hotel, confront Julie and Derek, and hand her the divorce papers on the spot. I wanted it to be a moment she'd never forget. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal. On the day of the getaway, Julie packed her bags and kissed me goodbye, telling me she'd be back on Sunday evening. "It's just a quick work retreat," she said with a smile. "Nothing exciting." I smiled back, my stomach churning with anger. "Have fun," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Once she left, I grabbed the divorce papers, threw on a jacket, and got in my car. My heart was racing as I drove to the hotel. I kept picturing the look on her face when she realized I knew everything. I wanted her to feel the same shock and pain I had felt when I found out she had been lying to me. When I arrived at the hotel, I parked my car a few blocks away so Julie wouldn't see it. I walked through the hotel lobby, my pulse pounding in my ears. The hotel was fancy 5 stars, with marble floors and chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. It was the kind of place where people came to escape their real lives for a weekend. I wondered how many other affairs were happening in that hotel at that very moment. I took the elevator up to the 5th floor, where they had booked a suite. Rick had given me the room number. As I walked down the hallway, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I had been waiting for this moment for weeks, and now it was finally happening. When I reached the door, I paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. This was it. I knocked. There was a brief pause before I heard footsteps approaching the door. It swung open, and there she was, Julie, standing in the doorway, wearing a silk robe. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Mike," she stammered, her face pale. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "I came to surprise you," I said, pulling the divorce papers from my jacket. "And to give you these." She grabbed the papers, her hands trembling as she opened them. Her face went through a range of emotions: shock, confusion, and then anger. "Divorce papers," she whispered. "That's right," I said, my voice steady. "I know about the affair, Julie. I know about Derek. I know everything." For a moment, she just stared at the papers, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to process what was happening. Then her eyes filled with fury. "How dare you," she hissed, stepping closer to me. "How dare you come here and—" Before she could finish, I cut her off. "Don't," I said firmly. "Don't even try to turn this around on me. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who destroyed our marriage." At that moment, I heard a voice from inside the room. "Julie? Who's at the door?" Derek stepped into view, wearing nothing but a pair of dress pants. The look on his face when he saw me was priceless. He froze, his eyes wide with shock. "Well, this just got even better," I said, laughing bitterly. "Derek, right? Nice to finally meet you." He didn't say a word. He just stood there, staring at me like a deer caught in the headlights. For a few moments, the three of us stood in awkward silence, Julie holding the divorce papers, Derek looking like he wanted to disappear, and me, soaking it all in. Finally, I turned to leave. "I'll let you two get back to your little getaway," I said over my shoulder. "Good luck with everything, Julie. I hope it was worth it." As I walked down the hallway toward the elevator, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It wasn't the kind of closure I had imagined, but it was enough. Julie had been caught, and there was no going back now. The divorce was happening, and I was finally free. In the days following the hotel confrontation, Julie called me non-stop. At first, her voicemails were angry, full of rage and accusations. She blamed me for embarrassing her in front of Derek, for ruining her life. She said I had no right to show up at the hotel and demanded that I fix this. It was almost laughable how quickly she tried to turn the situation around on me. But after a few days, her tone changed. The angry calls turned into desperate ones. She begged me to come home, to talk to her, to give her another chance. She promised that the affair didn't mean anything, that it was just a stupid mistake and that she still loved me. I listened to a few of the voicemails, but most of them I deleted without responding. I was done. There was nothing she could say to make me change my mind. The marriage was over, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into staying. A week after the hotel showdown, Julie packed up her things and moved out of our house. I didn't ask her where she was going, and I didn't care. The house, which had once been filled with memories of our life together, now felt like a prison. I couldn't stand to be there anymore. I made plans to sell the house. I needed a fresh start, away from the pain, away from the memories, away from everything that reminded me of her. As I packed up the house, I found myself thinking back to our first wedding anniversary. We had gone on a weekend trip to the mountains, staying in a cozy cabin by a lake. We spent the days hiking and the evenings curled up by the fire, talking about our future and how excited we were to grow old together. It felt like a lifetime ago. The woman I had spent that weekend with was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The weeks following the divorce were some of the hardest of my life. I had lost not only my wife but the future I had envisioned for us. I had loved Julie deeply, and the betrayal cut me to the core. There were days when I felt like I was drowning in sadness and anger. I couldn't stop thinking about the life we were supposed to have, the family we were supposed to build. I started going to therapy to help me process everything. Dr. Harris, my therapist, was calm and understanding. She helped me see that the affair wasn't my fault, that Julie had made her own choices, and that I deserved better. But even with her support, there were nights when I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head, wondering if there was something I could have done to save our marriage. But in the end, I realized that it didn't matter. Julie had made her decision, and now I had to make mine. After a few months of back and forth with realtors, I finally sold the house. It was a bittersweet moment, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I needed a clean slate, a place where I could start over without the weight of the past hanging over me. With the money from the sale, I bought a small condo downtown. It was modern, minimalist, and perfect for me. It felt like a fresh start, an opportunity to rebuild my life on my terms. Once I moved into my new place, I made a conscious effort to focus on myself. For so long, my life had revolved around my marriage, and I had lost sight of who I was outside of being Julie's husband. Now, I had the chance to rediscover the things that made me happy. I reconnected with old friends, started going to the gym again, and picked up hobbies I had let fall by the wayside, like woodworking and photography. It felt good to have something to pour my energy into, something that was just for me. There was a moment, about 6 months after the divorce was finalized, when I realized I had finally let go of Julie. I was sitting on the balcony of my new condo, watching the sunset with a cold beer in hand. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The anger, the sadness, the betrayal, they were all still there, but they didn't consume me anymore. I had made it through the worst of it, and now, I was ready to move forward. In that moment, I knew that I was going to be okay. Final update: moving forward with strength. Hey Reddit, I wanted to give you all a final update. It's been over a year since I served Julie those divorce papers at her secret hotel getaway, and I'm happy to say that I'm in a much better place now. The divorce was tough, it took a lot out of me emotionally, mentally, and financially. But looking back, I realize it was the best thing that could have happened to me. It forced me to take a hard look at my life and re-evaluate what I wanted and deserved. And now, I'm stronger because of it. I'm still living in my downtown condo, and I've built a life that I'm proud of. I've reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and rediscovered the things that make me happy. I'm not the same person I was before the divorce, I'm better. Julie and I haven't spoken since the papers were finalized, and I'm okay with that. She made her choices, and I've made mine. I've moved on, and I'm looking forward to whatever comes next. To anyone going through something similar, just know that you're not alone. It's going to be hard, and there will be moments when it feels like you'll never get through it. But you will. You're stronger than you think, and you deserve better. Thanks for all the support, Reddit. Here's to new beginnings.